Pokemon Sword and Shield are my least favorite games in the entire franchise. And if you're a newer fan, you may disagree and say that the wild area was great, that the gym leader designs were cool, that the music was banging, and sure, some of that is true. But when you think about Sword and Shield as a complete experience, as a game that's supposed to take you on a journey and make you feel something by the end, I genuinely think it is the most hollow, the most underdeveloped, and the most squandered entry in the entire mainline series. And nothing illustrates that better than its climax. Because the climax of Sword and Shield isn't just bad, it's a special kind of bad. It's the kind of bad where you can see what it was trying to do. You can see all the ingredients sitting there on the counter, and somehow Game Freak looked at all of it and said, yeah, let's not cook. So today we're going to talk about how Pokemon Sword and Shield managed to take what could have been one of the most compelling climaxes in the franchise and turn it into something you forgot about before you even reach the end credits. Now, before I get to ripping it apart, I want to establish something because I'm not one of those people who pretends that Pokemon has always been a bastion of incredible storytelling. It's not. It never has been, but here's the thing. Even when Pokemon games aren't trying to be deep, their climaxes tend to work. And that makes what Sword and Shield did so much more inexcusable. Let's start with the obvious examples. Black and White is widely considered the peak of Pokemon storytelling, and it's probably the only entry in the franchise with a legitimately good story that was fleshed out and developed over time. N's entire arc is a philosophical argument that the game has been having with you since the opening hours. Heck, even the beginning of the franchise. And within the game, it's built up with strong arguments, and N's character development throughout the whole journey. The battle between truth and ideals rages on between you and him until the final battle, and even after that climactic battle, you're left with the single best ending to any Pokemon game, with the fully fleshed out character with N and the awesome credits with his emotional departure. And this is something that the game earned, as every single beat of that climax was set up chapters in advance. Sun and Moon are another easy example. Lusamine is a genuinely unsettling villain. The whole game is dropping hints about who she really is through Lily and Gladion, and by the time she fuses with Nihilego in the climax, it's horrifying in exactly the right way, because the game spent time making you understand what a monster she is to the people closest to her, and it gives her just enough time to humanize her as well. The other plot of the development of the Alola League also had a strong payoff, with a lot of build-up, not just in terms of the hype of the league, but also with the characters of Kukui and Hao as champions depending on the version that you play. So even there it works out. But here's what I really want you to know. It's not just those games that have good climaxes. The other games in the franchise may not have good stories, but almost all of them do live up to the hype of their climax. Ruby and Sapphire, games that nobody really calls narrative masterpieces, have a climax that still lands. Maxie and Archie are goofy, sure, but the game commits to the threat. You've been building towards Groudon and Kyogre the entire time. When one of them breaks free and the region starts to literally fall apart, flooding or scorching depending on your version, you feel it. There's weight. The stakes are physical and visible and immediate. Emerald even tops us off with one of the hardest cutscenes in the game at the time, and even to this day, it's pretty cool. Diamond and Pearl, again, not a game famous for its story, still manages to stick the landing with Cyrus. The idea of a man so emotionally broken that he wants to unmake the universe and rebuild it without spirit is genuinely dark. And in Platinum, Giratina coming through a rift in reality to drag him away is a conclusion that feels mythological in scale. The game builds Cyrus as a cold, consistent presence throughout your entire journey, so that final confrontation means something. More than something, because in every version, he literally is on the brink of ending the world. Fire Red and Leaf Green has the crazy reveal with your rival being the champion, which was not only a plot twist at that time, but again, something that the series has been building up since the beginning of the game, since the rival was always one step ahead of you in their journey. Team Rocket and Giovanni were also set up and built up pretty early, which is why the shock of Giovanni being the 8th gym leader was such a big deal. But ultimately, the payoff is there for defeating the crime boss. Heart Gold and Soul Silver don't really have this kind of build-up the way the Kanto games do, but the Johto games do piggyback off the threat that Giovanni and Team Rocket are and try to play off his return through there, similar to how the true ending of the game piggybacks off the nostalgia of the Gen 1 games in the fight against Red. But even without that, the fight against Lance at least had some setup with you and him taking on Team Rocket together during your journey. Even X and Y, which is one of the weakest stories in the franchise, at least commits to the bit. Lysander is over the top. AZ's backstory is unexpectedly undoubtedly devastating, and the ultimate weapon going off is at least very memorable. My point is this: Pokemon games clear this bar pretty consistently. You don't need to be black and white to have a climax that respects the player's time and emotional investment. Most games in this franchise manage it just fine, but Sword and Shield did not. Let's talk about Chairman Rose, because Rose is someone who actually has an interesting concept as a villain, but was someone that was executed with almost criminal incompetence. On paper, Rose is a self-made billionaire who essentially runs the Galar region through his company, Macrocosmos. He discovered a young Leon when Leon was just a kid and turned him into the undefeated champion. So he's a mentor, a power broker, and the closest thing Leon has to a father figure, as far as we know at least. But he actually is a father figure to one of our rivals, Bede, as Bede was essentially taken in and supported by Rose. So there's a lot of good, or rather, there's a lot of humanity in Rose that we don't see in our usual Pokemon villains. And that even goes with his motives, because his motivation for villainy, he's not trying to conquer the world, he's not trying to get revenge, he's just discovered that in approximately 1,000 years, the Galar region is going to run out of energy, and he decided that he, right now, today, at the very moment the Pokemon League takes place, is where he needs to solve that problem, even if it means unleashing an apocalyptic Pokemon on the region in the process. That's a fascinating villain concept. A man whose fatal flaw isn't greed or hatred, but obsession. A man who is so convinced he's doing the right thing that he's willing to sacrifice the present to protect the future that won't exist for a millennium. There's something almost tragic about that, if the game had done anything with it, but it didn't. Rose is present throughout the game in the way that a motivational poster is present. He shows up, says something supportive, and leaves. You have dinner with him at a fancy restaurant somewhere in the game. He scolds and basically abandons Bede, and he's the one that even starts up the Gym Leader Challenge in Galar, making him the one to start the main plot of the games as well. Like, he just seems like a fine dude throughout, and then near the end, he does his villain switch up, and it lasts about 45 minutes of the game time before he's arrested. And this is the biggest problem that everyone has with Chairman Rose. It's the thing that drives me, and I think everyone who has a problem with these games, crazy about these games. Why did he decide to call upon the darkest day now? The game explicitly tells you that the energy crisis is coming in 1,000 years. 1,000 years. Rose has been aware of this problem, presumably for some time. He's had plans in motion. He runs one of the most powerful corporations in the world, and he decides that the moment to set up the apocalyptic plan into motion is right now, in the middle of the Champion Cup, while Leon is busy competing after being the one to start the Gym Leader Challenge himself, no less. Why? What changed? What was the urgency? What happened in that specific window of time that made Rose look at his calendar and go, yep, today's the day that I wake up the extension level event Pokemon and cause mayhem to the people. And the worst part of this is that the game doesn't tell you. It just happens because the plot needed it to happen. And this is a writing problem that feels embarrassingly easy to fix. Just give Rose a trigger. Maybe Macrocosmos discovered something new about the energy reserves. They're depleting faster than expected. Maybe there was an event in the recent past that made the crisis feel suddenly real and immediate to him. Maybe something happened with Leon that broke something in the relationship and made Rose feel like he had to act alone before it's too late. Any of that, any of it, just give the man a reason that makes sense in the moment, not a freaking 1,000-year-old existential anxiety about a problem that literally none of the people alive in Galar will ever live to see. And you know what the craziest part of this whole thing is? Rose does have a trigger in the Pokemon Journeys anime. I'm not too familiar with the Journeys anime besides a few key hype episodes, but I recently learned about Chairman Rose's backstory from a video from my friend GatorX. I highly recommend you check it out as it does explain both Rose and Peony's behavior and motivations through the backstory of the anime. But to explain it in brief for this video, Rose and Peony's father passed away when they were kids while he was out working in the Galar mines. The Galar mines being where the region would get its main source of energy from. And this event reflects in both of the boys growing up, because Peony tries to hold on to his daughter Peonia super tight, making him someone who holds on the past, unwilling to see his daughter grow up. And Rose doesn't want anyone to go through what his father did. And so he wants to find an alternative source of energy so no one has to go through what his father did. This in turn makes Rose obsessive about the future in a way where he wants to move away from the past so desperately that he completely ignores the present. I think the anime of all mediums realized how how terrible Rose's writing and explanation was that they decided to come here and fix it themselves. And honestly, they did, because to make Rose a compelling character, that's all they really need to do. However, this still doesn't fix the entirety of the climax because we still have a few more elements at play. But before we talk about that, how about you all hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with all my latest content? I'd greatly appreciate it, especially after all the rage I just had with this segment of this video. I'm actually like, oh my god. Let's talk about Eternitus, because the legendary Pokemon at the center of a climax is usually where the game makes its biggest statement, and Sword and Shield had something genuinely interesting to work with here. Eternitus is this cosmic horror that crashed into the Galar region on a meteor thousands of years ago, and has been dormant beneath the earth ever since, slowly leaking energy. Energy that, by the way, is apparently the source of the Dynamax phenomenon that the entire game is built around. So, Eternitus isn't just the final boss. It's the reason the region's signature mechanic exists. That's a cool idea. That's a really cool idea. Problem is, the game basically tells you this in a single cutscene and then moves on. There's no slow revelation, there's no moment where the player pieces it together from environmental storytelling or scattered lore. It's just, here's a Pokemon, it's been there the whole time, it causes Dynamax, and now Rose has woken it up. Okay, go deal with it. Compare that to how Ruby and Sapphire handled Groudon Kyogre. Those legendaries have been woven into the mythology of the Hoenn region throughout the entire game. You hear about them in Pokemon lore, you encounter cave paintings. Team Magma and Team Aqua are obsessive about them in a way that makes you feel like these Pokemon are ancient, powerful, and dangerous before you ever see them. When they finally appear, you already fear them. Or look at how Diamond and Pearl treat Dialga and Palkia. Cyrus has been building towards summoning them this entire time. The moment where the legendary Pokemon appears isn't just a spectacle, it's the culmination of everything the villain has been working towards. It feels like the story's inevitable destination. Eternitus just sort of wakes up. Rose pushes a button and then you go fight it. And then if it couldn't get any stupider, you just catch it, just like that. You weaken it with Zacian and Zamazenta, you throw a Pokeball, and it's done. The apocalyptic ancient cosmic horror is caught. And then you hand it to Leon, go downstairs, and fight him for the title. I need someone to explain to me how the creative team signed off that sequence of events and felt good about it. You just casually caught the reason for an apocalyptic energy crisis, and your reward is a regular championship battle? God, man, what were they thinking? There's no moment of reckoning, there's no quiet scene where characters process just what happened. The game doesn't even pause, it just shuffles you along. The Crown Tundra DLC, to its credit, actually does add more lore around Eternitus and the Galar legendaries, and it's genuinely good, which somehow makes things worse, because it proves that the people making this game understood how interesting this mythology could be. They just didn't put it in the main game, and keep in mind, Sword and Shield were the first games in which they didn't have an alternate or third version associated to it, so a lot of these exclusions in the game could have actually genuinely been Game Freak trying to take core elements of the game and saving it for the DLC so that we get the full picture then. But this choice, if it was a conscious choice, definitely backfired, because literally no one appreciated this. The Rose and Eternitus problems don't exist in isolation. They're symptoms of a game that consistently refused to slow down and let its own story breathe. Of a story that refused to give us any bit of depth. Leon is a prime example. The game wants you to believe that Leon is the greatest trainer alive, the undefeated, beloved, once-in-a-generation champion of Galar, but it never shows you anything that makes you feel that. He shows up to some battles involving Dynamax troubles, he's supportive, he gets lost a lot, which is played for laughs, but also kind of undermines the myth around him. I mean, it wouldn't if we actually got to see him fight, but we don't. By the time he shows up defeated on the floor of the energy plant, your reaction isn't shock or dread, it's just, okay, guess that happened. The only reason why Leon doesn't get clowned on the way that Guido does is because Leon's battle is actually genuinely tough. The champion fight is second to Cynthia if you ask me, so the build-up does pay off. It just doesn't show until you face him, which kinda sucks. You could argue that's the case with Cynthia as well, but Cynthia doesn't have that level of hype that Leon did. Cynthia was shrouded in mystery. Leon, there's no mystery. We know everything about him, and there was nothing to support those claims. It's not the same. It's not the same. Hop is a character I actually have some sympathy for, because his personal arc, going from a story-eyed rival to someone who discovers his own identity outside of his brother's shadow, is one of the better character journeys in recent Pokemon. But his arc is almost completely disconnected disconnected from the main plot. His growth happens alongside the story, not because of it. And at the climax, he's just kind of there, cheering, being supportive. The game had every opportunity to tie Hop's arc into the consequence of Rose and Leon's actions, and it just didn't. And then there's the pacing. Again, the final sequence of events in Sword and Shield happens so fast that it almost feels like the game is running out of cartridge space. Rose disappears, Eternitus wakes up, Leon falls, you catch Eternitus, championship, credits, it's over. If you told me that a group working on this game somewhere said that the game was too long and they cut out the last 3 hours of story content to compensate, I would totally believe you. Let me tell you what I think this game could have been and what it could have done to be better. Start seeding Rose's crisis throughout the game, not just at the end. Let there be small signs throughout your journey that something is wrong with Macrocosmos. A journalist asking uncomfortable questions, maybe a Macrocosmos facility that's running at unusual capacity, a throwaway line from worker that doesn't quite add up. Make the player feel like something's building up before it arrives. Give Rose a trigger, something specific that happens near the end of the game that convinces him that he can't wait any longer. Maybe new data about the energy depletion, maybe a fracture in his relationship with Leon that makes him feel like he has to act before Leon can stop him, or just the expanded backstory about his father's passing like in the anime. Give the man a reason, rooted in that specific moment, not a vague anxiety about a problem a millennium away. Let us feel Eternitus before we fight it. The Dynamax phenomenon is everywhere in this game. What if the escalating Dynamax incidents throughout the story were being caused by Eternitus stirring beneath the earth? What if by the time Rose actually woke it up, the player had been watching the consequences of his power without knowing it? That reveal would have been much more epic. Let Leon actually fight. Show us why this man is the champion. Make his defeat against Eternitus a genuine spectacle that he almost wins. Let his loss mean something here instead. And after the legendary stopped, give the characters a moment to breathe. Let Hop reckon with what just happened to his brother. Let Leon grapple with the fact that he lost and that the person he trusted the most caused it. Let the world feel different. None of that requires a complete rethinking of the game. Those are just adjustments. The structure is already there. The characters are already there. The mythology is already there. But instead, we got 45 minutes of Chairman Rose, a Pokeball throw, and a champion battle. I honestly think Sword and Shield are irredeemably bad games. I've said my piece about why I find them hollow, and I stand by it. But there are people out there who genuinely love these games, and I get the vibe of Galar appeal to them, but the climax, the story, that I can't defend. And that's what makes it the most frustrating entry in the series for me personally. Not that it was bad from the jump, but that it kept showing you flashes of what it could have been and then pulling back every single time. If you want to see what it looks like when a Pokemon story actually commits to the premise all the way through, then I've got a breakdown of the Ruby and Sapphire manga on the channel. And also a video on all the best plot twists in every Pokemon game. And if you want to see me go through Sword and Shield's world and pick apart everything else that fumbled, just subscribe and be sure to let me know in the comments. Thank you so much to all my members, and thank you for watching.